All right, guys, welcome to the podcast. I wanted to take a moment to do some rapid fire announcements. These are just some things that will be happening at the gym this year and also some smaller housekeeping notes. If you want to skip these, I'm going to put the appropriate timestamps in the video description. But if you train at my school currently, I think it's probably worth listening to. So the first thing, we're going to pull the trigger on adding a third bathroom. It looks like we've got space to add a decent sized bathroom in the storage area next to the stairs leading down to mat 2, and I want to get this project started within the next couple weeks. Second thing, I'm also happy to announce that our initial launch of the Basics program has been even more successful than I ever thought it would be. We've been hosting these classes on mat 2, and I appreciate everyone bearing with the construction dust. We're going to be finishing up the wall mats, the cleanup and the details on mat 2 within the next couple of months. We're really just waiting for the wall mats to ship. And we're not just looking to finish expanding mat 2. I've been looking at this 12-week basics curriculum as sort of a pilot program for something more complete. So later this year, what I would like to do is I would like to refilm the basics program and optimize for higher audio and video quality, and also expand the program to something longer, maybe 16, 18, 20 weeks, could be even as much as 24 weeks. I just want to take a look at what we've got and see where it could go. Third announcement. Just want to give a quick shout out to the competition team. We've got a pretty decent sized crew competing at Grappling Industries on Saturday, and I've been really impressed with everybody's preparation so far. The school is going to be closed on Saturday. In fact, if you're listening to this, the school is going to be closed tonight. That would be Friday the 19th. But we're hoping for as much team support as possible on competition day. I'm going to be there from start to finish, and I am really excited to see everyone's training translate to great performances. Okay, next up, just another small housekeeping note. I'd like to circle back on asking students to sign in for classes online. That's through the scheduling page. We've always encouraged everyone to sign in for each class through hurricanejj.com/schedule. And I know that it's not the most exciting thing to do, but it really does help us remember students' names. It helps give us a general overview of which classes are the most popular. We've even had students use the sign-in portal to track how many times they train each year, which it's just sort of a cool feature of the sign-in system. So please do that if you have time. All right, last housekeeping note, and this one is really important to me. So over the past several months, I've noticed that our casual lateness policy it's tipped pretty far out of control. I've noticed students coming in later and later, sometimes as much as 30 minutes late. I was training this past Sunday at Dan's submission grappling class, and I was really bummed out with how many people are just sort of casually rolling in late. I've been training for 17 years. I own the school, and I would still shoot Dan a text and bust my ass in a panic to get there if I was going to be running late to his session. I do want to be clear. I know that there are folks who are combating work and scheduling issues, and I still want you at class, whether you're late or not. But I also know that much of the time it's just a time management issue. So I'm asking all of you just to tighten it up a little bit, is just as much as you're able. Partly out of respect for the instructors, but even more so for your training partners who are there on time. They've seen the warm-up drills and they're ready to work. All right, let's move on to something more interesting. So I recently recorded a conversation with my friend Edgar Ovalle. He is host of the Flow Roll podcast. We touched on a variety of topics, but the one that seemed to resonate most with the audience was this idea of getting better at jiu-jitsu faster, or more precisely, how to optimize your training time, how to optimize every single minute you spend on the mat, especially given a limited training schedule. Now, on that particular day, I had trained at the 6:30 a.m. session. I rushed home to jump on the podcast, and I had quite a bit of coffee en route. So when I listened back to the conversation, I felt like I had definitely rushed many of the points that I was trying to hit. So I wanted to take some time here to clearly lay out 5 things every student should consider when attempting to optimize their mat time. As we get into the first point here, let's just assume that you've already found a good school. Now, good school might mean different things to different people. It might mean a place that you feel welcome. It might be a place that has a schedule that aligns well with yours. It might mean that your school has a proven track record of producing very competent grapplers in a reasonably short training window. It might mean all these things. In fact, it might even be worth doing an entire podcast on what defines a good school in the future. But for now, let's just assume that it means you've found a place that you're happy training. So you've found a good school. Once you've done that, the first thing you should do to optimize your training time is to find a training buddy at your school. The ideal training buddy is going to be someone who's around your size, close to you in age, and whose short and long-term training goals align with yours in a general sense. Someone who you consider a peer. The value of a training buddy is revealed in many different ways. This is someone who is willing to drill with you, either off hours, more on what I mean by drilling later on, during designated class drilling times or during open mat / sparring time. This is someone who's going to have your phone number, keep you engaged in coming to class, share technique videos with you, travel with you to competitions if that's your thing, and help you progress through a sort of mutually cooperative competition. You will push each other to be better. Every standout student at my school has some variation of what I would consider a training buddy. I myself, I've had many throughout the years. This is a solo sport in certain ways, but nobody improves in a vacuum. So I'll be referencing back to your training buddy in just a little bit. The second thing you have to do to optimize your training time is drill. But at this point in my coaching career, I am almost allergic to the word drill because of how misunderstood the concept is. To be clear, I am against drilling in the traditional sense, the sense that you might currently understand it. Do 50 arm bars, shoot 20 single legs, then your partner does 20 single legs, and then we'll spar for an hour. Oh, thank God it's over, so now we can spar for an hour. I think back on the hours, the years that I wasted doing traditional drills on totally disinterested, disengaged training partners. And I am so grateful to offer my students a more efficient route from technical infancy to competency. For the top BJJ teams in the world, traditional drilling is dead. What students truly need is positional drills at incrementally increasing resistance levels. So for the purpose of the rest of this podcast, we're going to call this dynamic positional drilling. And they need to do this with a partner who is just as engaged as they are. So let's get specific. All brand new techniques that you practice will require, at least at the start, near zero resistance. But training partners who are dummying for you, traditionally referred to as the uke, still have an active role to play. They must offer a realistic structure and a dynamic target that is moving in a realistic way. So much like a dance partner, they can still guide you towards success at near zero resistance while still offering a structure to work against. So I think it's helpful to think that in drilling, it's never your turn, and I'm putting that in quotes, during these drills. They're cooperative and they require the full attention of both students. Being a good drilling partner is a skill. Let's use the gi variation of the double leg takedown as an example. So try to visualize with me. Your partner is on their feet at a distance. They're in a low stance with their hands out front, and they are attentive to your movement. So you engage in some light hand fighting, and your training partner makes an initial collar grip. Now, the grip is light, and they give you plenty of time to react and break the grip. But the engagement would look totally realistic to any outside observer. Once the grip is broken, you snap your partner down lightly at the collar and sleeve. Since your partner is engaged and they're offering a realistic structure, they don't just flop over. They react to the snap by straightening up a little bit, which is totally realistic. You lower your level and you shoot your double leg entry. You reset to distance and you do the work all over again. Okay, so once you've traced the major outlines of setting up and entering your double leg takedown, and once you feel truly comfortable at near zero resistance, you ask your partner to turn up their attributes a little bit. Just a little more movement, a little more tension in the grip, a little more scramble after the initial shot. Nothing extreme. And if they turn it up too much, you just ask them to bring it down to a manageable level. This is your training buddy, and you've got to be comfortable communicating with them. And you just continue drilling like this. As your comfort increases over the weeks and the months, so does the resistance. Think of it as climbing rungs one by one on a very tall ladder. You're not just going to jump to the top of the ladder right away. Going from traditional drilling to dynamic positional drilling will literally cut years off of your technical progression curve. The last thing to keep in view with dynamic positional drilling is the positional component of this phrase. To understand that no technique exists in a vacuum and that you're training a position as a whole. So you have to avoid tunnel vision. So many times in class, I've watched my students drill this exact same double leg sequence that I just described. One time I had a student who was doing a really nice job with the initial engagement, the gripping and the snap setup, but his partner, who was dummying for the takedown, was just sort of checked out and switched off during one of the repetitions. And when the snap down came, the person who was acting as the training dummy just fully folded over and their hands were snapped down to the mat. Just imagine somebody in front of you with their knees and their hands on the floor and their head low. So the student who is trying to execute the takedown looks at me and says, "How am I supposed to shoot on his legs when his head and hands are blocking them?" My student was doing a great job of drilling the steps of the initial takedown on its own, but the whole thing fell apart when a different reaction presented itself. And this is why we train the position as a whole. He just needed to have the presence of mind to grab a simple front headlock and attack the neck or take the back as part of that drilling series. The third consideration for optimizing your training time is finding ways to study outside of class, doing some extra credit work. In the modern era, this is mostly going to involve finding video instructionals or competitive matches that are relevant to your interest and studying them in a totally goal-oriented way. I've seen plenty of people come and go throughout the years, and every single standout grappler I've ever met does some form of extracurricular study. They're taking their study of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in their own hands, at least outside of class. So how would you go about doing this? Let's just keep it simple. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose an instructional that is relevant to your interests. So for example, if you're interested in self-defense, you would consider buying something from an instructor who's fought or coached MMA and also has a credible grappling pedigree. If you're more interested in pure sport jiu-jitsu, you'd want to find instructionals produced by coaches who have a track record of producing great competitors. Once you know what you'd like to study, the next step is to narrow your focus on a specific position. The beauty of modern jiu-jitsu is you've got websites like BJJ Fanatics aggregating all of the best material in one spot, and it's fully searchable by position. So maybe you'd like to improve your open guard. After a quick search, you're going to have plenty of options at your fingertips. Okay, so finally, you've found an instructor and a position that you'd like to study. Now, you'll have to make peace with the idea that you won't be able to absorb all of this knowledge in one sitting, or maybe even in 1 year, and that's fine. So let's instead just lay out a few simple goals. Number 3, use the concepts from our discussion on dynamic positional drilling to begin building skills in this area with your training buddy. Number 4, begin integrating your new techniques into your higher resistance training, your sparring, and then of course, ultimately competition if you're a competitor. So here's a pretty interesting story on extracurricular study. I study matches on flowgrappling.com on a fairly regular basis. And I was watching a replay of the ADCC 2022 match between Gordon Ryan and Andre Galvao. So I noticed that Gordon kept forcing Andre to play bottom knee shield half guard. And for those of you that might not be familiar, let's just visualize for a second. Andre is laying on the bottom on his back and he's tilted onto his right hip. His top left leg is blocking Gordon, at least initially, from closing the distance and getting to chest-on-chest contact. And Gordon is dropping all of his weight over that shin with his hands palming and holding Andre's hips and lower back as they move. If you'd like a video reference for this, you will need a Flow Grappling account, but this specific position initiates at roughly the 15-minute, 10-second mark, and Andre's half guard really starts to fall apart around 22 minutes in. Now, to the untrained eye, this position looks totally static and frankly quite boring. And these guys spend roughly 6 minutes in and out of this position or variations of this position. But ultimately, Gordon, he wears Andre's half guard out. The half guard just sort of falls apart and he gets mounted, he gets his back taken, and then ultimately gets finished. And Gordon does this without spending much energy at all. So I'm watching this and I go, well, this is a skill set that I've got to add to my arsenal. So I took this position to the training room and I integrated it into dynamic positional drilling with my training buddy and black belt, Dan Sweeney, along with a few other training partners when Dan wasn't available. I did this for several months leading up to and after the Nogi Pan American tournament. Progress was definitely slow at the start and resistance was low, but over the course of several months, I became pretty effective in a position that was relatively new just a few months prior. So let's fast forward to the Nogi Pan American tournament. Let's make a long story short. I did manage to use some of the new positional concepts to pass half guard and secure a submission victory in my first match. Obviously, I was happy about that. In my second match, I found the position again, but this time only to be swept right into a submission just because of a subtle positional variation that I hadn't yet studied. It was a half butterfly guard hook for those of you who understand the position. So upon arriving home, the whole cycle just begins again. I take my match footage, I analyze what was novel about passing the knee shield position in that particular match, and I just made further refinements. And I now consider it to be one of my strongest guard passing positions, and I would very confidently bring that position against any opponent at any event. And all of this happened within the span of about 6 months. Our fourth area of focus for optimizing your training is one I've covered multiple times in the past, so I'm going to keep this section very brief. Periodize your training. In other words, vary the volume and intensity of your training over the course of several weeks. You could use anywhere from a 4 to 8 week window as a basic structure. It should be written down, but flexible, and saved for future reference. Look, the days of grinding year-round at 100%, leaving it all on the mats, smashing your heads together, sparring at full clip on a weekly basis, those days are dead. At least they're dead for the top teams in the world. If you look at the best grappling teams in the world, the truly world class, their approach is one of balance. Now, let me be clear, there's always a time and a place for gritty, sweat-soaked, blood-stained training, and honestly, in many ways, that's my favorite kind. But I'm an advocate for a balanced approach, especially after nearly 20 years of wear and tear on my body. So how should you structure your training over the course of a training period? The first thing to consider is everyone's different. Different training schedules, different goals, different training ages. But generally, there should be multi-week periods that are exclusively about skill building. Multi-week periods that begin to sort of layer in moderate intensity training, and multi-week periods where high intensity, hard sparring really comes into focus and building new skills starts to fall by the wayside. For competitors, that last period would be 1 to 2 weeks out from a competition, depending on your specific needs. And as one training period ends, you might take a little time off, but then another begins. And you'll have a new set of objectives, goals, and new skills that you want to pick up. If you can find the discipline to train this way, I promise you your entire game will accelerate. Your injuries and bang-ups will become less frequent. Of course, they'll never fully go away. And your grappling career might even extend by decades. And finally, our fifth bullet point. This one is short. The last thing every grappler needs to do in order to foster progression. Simply put, you've got to stay humble. I know. How boring. But just hang with me here for a second. Leave your ego at the door is a classic martial arts platitude that has become almost meaningless at this point. What does it mean to stay humble, and why should you? I mean, like, literally, who cares? Well, let me just sharpen this point up a little bit and just say, never allow yourself to get to a point where you feel like you've got the entire game figured out. Because the moment you arrive in that headspace, I promise you, someone will come along sooner or later and prove you wrong. They will make you take back something that you promised to a room full of training partners. I've told this story before. I once had a brand new student, first week of training, help me refine a grip in a position that I felt like I had mapped out pretty well. The details of the story don't really matter, but I'd showed a technique. I think it was a sweep, and this new student politely calls me over and asks something like, "Hey coach, I feel more comfortable gripping the wrist like this. Why don't you do it this way?" Now, a younger version of me might have dug his heels in and started listing reasons as to why I don't do it that way without fully considering the possibilities. But it really seemed like there was some merit in what he was doing, so I gave it a try, and it felt right. I tried it again, 5 times, many times, and I ended up just calling the entire room back, and I told them, guys, like, look, we've got a better way to do this technique. It was a total correction in real time. I frequently have experiences that remind me how endless grappling can be. One of the worst roadblocks a student can encounter is feeling like they've got their game totally wired and that they might not have much more to learn from their coaches. This is an experience that happens to almost everyone around late blue belt, early purple belt. You know, not every single person, but generally this is what I've seen happen time and time again over the years. This is when students become much more difficult to teach. I'm not proud to admit it, but I went through this same type of phase when I was around purple, getting close to brown. I think in a way it's human nature, and it's a natural part of the learning cycle. Still, as best you can, try to stay humble. And I'm not talking about false humility. I'm talking about really, truly believing that there's always more to learn. So I hope everyone enjoyed this mini solo podcast. As always, if you have questions, shoot me a DM on Instagram or shoot me a text at the school number. Thanks for listening.